All right, welcome everybody. We're back here in Studio B doing the Pollinate sessions. And those of you that don't know what Pollinate is, well, go back to school and learn something and quit bothering the teacher quite so much. We're here today with Greg Ruth, who is we are proud to say, our cider maker extraordinaire. He's brought the A game to Wilson's hard cider production and is about to get ready to get schooled up in sweet cider production. We welcome him with open arms and empty wallets these days. And yeah, great to have you around, Greg. Great to have you on board, and great to be sitting here shooting the shit and drinking a little cider.
Cheers.
Yeah, cheers to you.
So, hey, ready? Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Tell us a little bit about your road to ciderdom. I mean, what brought you to cider? What brought you to Wilson's?
Yeah. Little bit of a windy road, I guess. We'll say I started drinking cider when I was 21. We'll say that.
We'll leave it at that.
Yeah, we'll leave it at that. Yeah, so I moved to D.C. after college. Grew up in the Midwest here in North Dakota. Moved to D.C. after college to work for a design build firm as their draftsman, head designer and draftsman.
This is a windy road.
It is a windy road, yeah. I ramble a lot, by the way. So
that's good. That's
so
good.
Yeah.
Get a few ciders in you. We may get some real curves in the road.
Exactly. But yeah, so stuck it out for about 7 years in that job, and I guess on paper, being an architect is great. You can use your design elements and artistic flair and all that. But at the end of the day, when it's a homeowner's money, they want what they want, and they don't care if you went to school or not. They don't, So that wore me down a little bit, and I was ready for the next adventure. And I was actually in the early stages of looking to move to Scotland and get just a crap job at a distillery because I love Scotch, and was like, that would just be fun. That'd be a fun adventure to do and learn a craft, actually create something. I mean, I designed hundreds and hundreds of projects, so you could say I had a hand in it, but I wasn't building it, right? It was our carpenters that were actually building it. I would get out to the job site maybe once or twice a quarter and then try not to fall off rafters is basically all I was doing. But anyway, so I had two really good friends, still really good friends, that I met in DC who had moved to the Bay Area. This is probably 2012. And they had decided to start up a cider company, and they asked me to join them. And this is it all happened right within me getting ready. I had just started looking at visas, the visa process, so I wasn't too far down the road at all with Scotland. And yeah, it was really cute. When we sat down, it was right around Christmas. They were back in DC for Christmas, and they put together a really well thought out business plan, presented it to me in a binder and all that. And they made the mistake, if they wanted me to read it, of saying we want to start a cider. They just presented it without getting into the nitty gritty, and I was like, yeah, I'm in. Like, without even opening it, they put in hours of work. Didn't care. I'm in. I don't care. Bootstrap company. So we all lived together in a actually really nice sized apartment in San Francisco, or the Bay Area.
What's nice size? Like 4x8?
Yeah, exactly, about the size of this roof. Yeah. But yeah, so started a company out of San Bruno, California, super urban fermentation space, about 2,000 square feet, and just sort of built it from the ground up. They're still going as strong as you can with COVID happening right now. But yeah, in the end of 2019, decided I'm ready for that next step, if you will. We brought on at South City, we brought on a former head brewer of actually one of my favorite breweries in the Bay Area called Free Will Brew Co. We brought her on we didn't poach her. She took some time off and was ready to get back into the beverage game. Brought her on to sort of phase me out. So Alicia is her name. Alicia Jen and Tim Waugh are all sort of heading up the production there and rocking out those modern style ciders that we were doing. Me, myself, I was just looking through job postings and all that. Had the opportunity to potentially move to Korea to work for a cider company there at the worst time in potentially human history. I don't know. And unfortunately, the timing with that and this global pandemic just wasn't the right move. So luckily for everybody here and for me, I mean, I'm loving this so far. Just found a posting. You might want to talk to whoever does the job postings. I don't know if that's Jacob or what, but I had to search cider jobs, not hard cider jobs, to find the Wilson's posting, but came across that, and yeah, I guess the rest is history. We interviewed on late April, and my first day, it was mid to late April, and first day was June 1st. So found a car, found an apartment. It was yeah. So that's how I ended up here. To answer that.
So what's interesting about cider to you? I mean, as you know, there's lots of tipples out there, right? What makes cider near and dear to your heart?
For me, it's that, you can call it romantic story, and we've talked about this a little bit. I honestly sort of had a crisis of faith, if you will, at the end of 2019, just really figuring out what the heck I want to do, what's the next chapter look like. And it did. It ultimately came right back around to cider, because it is that the founding fathers of this country, started this. They drank it more than water. They drank it, what Thomas Jefferson woke up and drank a gallon, I think, before lunch or something. The gallon might be a lot, but and unfortunately, with the way history played out and the temperance movement and all that, what we call hard cider now, what used to just be called cider, was basically wiped out in America and replaced by juice. And all those beautiful old trees and orchards just burned to the ground. And as you well know, it takes time and money to plant those trees and wait for them to fruit. And it's a lot easier just plant grain. If you're trying to make some alcohol, just plant some grain and make some whiskey, and you're good to go. Or beer. I get drawn to that. That is what sort of brings me back, and really trying to make the best cider we can. What the beautiful thing that I forgot to touch on is one thing that I did know in my cider journey before coming here is I wanted to be closer to an orchard. And it's not to knock cider companies that don't have a direct source to apples. In my mind, as long as you're doing right by the apple, by the fruit, and trying to source it as best you can. A lot of people, get from the West Coast or Michigan, or I think even Pennsylvania might be an apple producer state. New York definitely up there, but as long as you're doing right by the fruit, I think you're doing right. But for me in my journey, I was ready to actually be involved with the pressing season. Gearing up for. What is it? The saying goes, I've been here for 5 years, but 3 seasons, or everybody counts their seasons. Yeah. So I'm ready for my first season. And really talking with you, learning with you and Kyle about what actually, what makes what we're drinking, unique and whatnot. So, again, I'm rambling, but, it's that story. I think that's what keeps drawing me back. And there is something, whether it's alcohol or, I love to entertain, so I love to cook as well. But there's something there. There's something that, no matter how stressful it is, because it's more often than not always going to be stressful and super not glamorous. I'm covered in yeast nutrient, right now. But knowing that, all that stuff that we ferment and take the time to mature however we want it, age on oak, blah, 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 is going to be a part of somebody's, hopefully their celebration, we have a wedding coming up here. Hopefully it's still on, that they're reserved a keg of Old Blue. So, we're producing something that they love so much that they want specifically at their wedding, that keg, which is pretty cool. And so to be a part of that in the grand, is that meta? Is that what it is? The grand meta scheme? I always forget
believe that's right.
Yeah. It is pretty darn cool. I think.
Yeah, I think that's right. I buy into that. The thing that I find interesting about cider, one of them, outside of the historical sort of context that we're at here in America, and as a derivative of sort of our English, German, Irish, French heritages by and large, is that you have the beer industry, which thank God has gone back to its local roots and its regional roots and producing beers that are just cranking. I mean, that industry is just so much better than it was when I was again at 21, of course, starting to experiment with it. The sort of, it had become the Miller, you could drink Miller or Bud or something equally kind of lame. But now there's great beers. And likewise, the whole California resurgence and the development of great wines, not just in America, of course, not by a long shot, but around the world. You have access to great wines that are, produced at vineyards and things. But I think cider is just such an interesting product because, unlike beer, it is something that you can grow the fruit and produce a product from the stuff. Breweries don't generally grow barley. It's just not a thing. Wineries do, but wine is a little more of an exclusive product by and large. And I think cider sort of combines, to me, the best of wine, which is, you can do an estate product, with the best of beer, which is it's a common person's drink in a large way. And I just find, personally, it goes down really good. It's a really refreshing product. But also on a philosophical level, it's crank to be able to take an apple like a Gold Rush or a Macintosh or whatever, or a Dabinett, and produce something that is different year to year, for one thing. There is difference in terroir, certainly. Growing up in Michigan, I can truly represent that a Sweet 16 or Song of September grown there or here is a different animal. It just is. This area grows a certain kind of apple really well and very flavorful, and the products that we can make are different because of that. I think that's just great.
And is that all because of the weather we get is a little more, temperament?
Yeah. Let's just be clear here. Midwestern people are the core of the earth. It's just a fact. Everybody recognizes that, and that's because they have to put up with bullshit weather. We have really cold winters. Really high today is like 95 degrees something about 180% humidity, something like that out there. It just melts you outside.
I definitely forgot how humid the Midwest gets.
Especially corn season around here. And irregardless of the fact that we lost something like 40% of our corn crop because of the derecho, it's still pumping a lot of humidity in the air around here. But anyways, it isn't a great climate, let's be honest, but it makes interesting people. I think maybe it makes us all a bit loony, but it challenges plants, and I think as a result, what we're learning more and more is challenges to plants result in certain components in the fruit or the grain or whatever that is. And I think with apples, it's very clear that stress creates a certain kind of profile in a lot of these apples. We don't grow apples very well that can't handle heat. We don't grow apples very well that can't handle really cold winter temperatures. But if you're within that range, between those two goalposts, we can grow a fruit that tastes as good as anything you'll find anywhere, I think, in terms of apples.
And is it generally, or is it just variety specific, or is it generally like Iowa grows more tart or sweet, or is it just specifically the
Well, it's kind of interesting. So if you look, and I'm, my dad was a big time fruit procurer and grower, and he traveled all around the Midwest procuring fruit and apples in particular. And he used to tell me that, like Missouri grows great Jonathans, and Michigan grows a lot of Jonathans too, but the Jonathans in Michigan are tartar than the Jonathans from Missouri, and they're smaller. So Missouri Jonathans are known for just really good eating. They're kind of a nice balance between tart and sweet. I think what I've seen in Iowa so far is compared to Michigan, which has a very the climate is so dictated by the Great Lakes because that tempers the big ups and downs. You don't get these huge swings, hot, cold, hot, cold. You get more of a steady state, fluctuations. And I think the fruit grows well there. It's more consistent in terms of bloom and fruit set and things like that. But you never develop some of the really high-end notes, I believe.
Okay.
I think what we get here is lower yields, but when you hit, you really hit.
Yeah.
Like a Gold Rush that's finished properly in Iowa, I think is just about hard to imagine how that fruit could get that much better.
Okay.
Now that's not true of every fruit, but I think, like I say, stuff that can't handle heat in particular doesn't do well here, but stuff that can, we grow it well, and I think we flavor it well. So yeah, and as a result, I think that's our process. Our journey as we go forward is let's figure out, what have we been here like 12, 13 years now that we've been growing fruit here. I mean, Wilson's been around longer, but since we started planting apple trees, having acquired Wilson's in our other orchard, we've been planting stuff out and feeling our way rather blindly sometimes. What do we need to be planting? What do we really excel at, right? And I think that's one of the things that I look forward to you with is let's figure out what we're really capable of doing because, we have been, I think, not as sophisticated as we could be in terms of how we manage the yeast to bring out, like you said, how are you treating that apple? Are you really bringing out its full potential? And I don't think we have been. So I'm super excited. I go back to the fact that, to me, the best cider we ever made, bar none, was a Gold Rush. It was a barrel of 55 gallons. And maybe it's nostalgia and stuff like that. Maybe it was frickin' cold that day, and we had this stuff, and it was like the 23rd of December, and we had pressed it, fermented it, and let it sit, and didn't know what the hell we were doing. And we dug into that it was the day, maybe it was the 23rd or 24th, and we had been pruning, and we dipped into that. I tell you, it just opened my eyes to cider. That was my aha moment for cider. It's like, God, this is really freaking good.
Yeah. The thing that I, just to draw in sort of how Iowa and the weather and all that plays a part in it. Like for me, that's where I nerd out in cider is the fermentation. It's like the temperature that you ferment at, the nutrients they add, when you add the nutrients, all that plays a part in stressing the yeast. Generally, you don't want to stress your yeast, but if you do in certain ways, you can really let that shine through. Hopefully, let the apple come through more. But the other thing too is yeast selection. That's one thing we haven't really. September 1 will be my third month here, so. Right now, I'm just trying to get things geared. Again, first season starting. Basically, we're pressing on Monday, so strap in. Once we get through this season, and I'm still blindly optimistic that it's going to be no stress and just super easy, smooth sailing. But we'll see how long that lasts. Really trying to figure out, especially when we get to these cider varieties. Like I've never fermented a cider specific fruit, and hopefully we didn't lose too many.
Yeah,
with the derecho, but
we did lose some.
Yeah, And I'll say Mike. I feel bad. I forgot his last name. Bird or Bert? Bert. He's brought in a bunch of wild stuff. When he's running the press, he'll take some home and just let it ferment. Yeah. And even that, we were just talking before we started the mics up about that wild ferment Gold Rush y'all did before I got here. And I'm super excited, one, to do some of just large scale wild ferment stuff, but then also get a house culture, because that stuff is tasting beautiful to me. And we can just get that Saccharomyces strain that just sort of is living all around us, and have our own house culture that we can might not be right for our easy drinking crushable ciders, but that layer of complexity and still maintaining a bunch of fruitiness was pretty exciting for me in a nerdy yeast way.
Well, and that is one of the challenges we face, is that Iowa is not Oregon or Washington or New York State. There's a lot more history there with the revival of cider. It sort of started on the coast, especially on the West Coast, and they have developed a lot more of a following for some of the drier ciders and stuff that I would just say in Iowa we haven't seen as much of yet. So as we move forward, I think our challenge is keep going with the crushable stuff and the easy drinking stuff. But on the other hand, for instance, we've got a really nice crop on a whole 10 trees of Kingston Black this year. I am super excited. Kingston Black is one of the ones that's often cited as a really nice single varietal cider. Drier, tannic, and it'll just be great to and we may not get it right this year, or we may, who knows, but it'll be fun as hell to see what we can do with some of these with a wild ferment, which is what most of the better English ciders, certainly French ciders and Spanish ciders, pretty much all of them are wild fermented. Developing our own culture and trying to learn how to work with these varieties is really exciting, I think. If nothing else, we're going to have some damn good cider to drink, whether the hell anybody watching this gets any of it. Well, that's their problem.
And if it goes wrong, we'll just, cold, mix some of that, what is the alcohol that we freeze?
Oh, yeah, well, we probably better not talk about that on there.
Personal consumption.
But we do look forward to seeing how that works out. We've got, I'm sure we have at least 80 to 100 varieties still of different apples, of which there's probably 30 or 40 that are really strong candidates for making some good ciders. And I think just having Gold Rush, we grow a lot of Gold Rush, a lot of Dabinett, some Yarlington Mill, and then a bunch of other English and French cider varieties. But we also grow some pretty interesting stuff like Liberty, for instance, that makes a pretty nice cider that we've seen, and some others as well. So it'll be interesting to see how over the next few years. The problem, of course, is this, that we also make sweet cider, and then we have apples that need harvested, and everything kind of comes in a big crunch. And it's easy to say, we'll get to that later, right? Instead of paying the time and attention to really make that happen when it's the right time to do it. So you won't need a lot of sleep anyways, right?
I'm young still.
It's overrated.
I got nothing going on. There you go. These bars are closed.
That's right. They just closed the bars here. So what the hell are you gonna do?
I just go home, watch YouTube videos.
There you go. We can just put a hammock up in the cider bar.
Perfect. It's couch. We're good.
Hey, let's dip into this. This is so this is Eden's Heritage Cider. Tell us a little. What do you know about this one?
What I know about it is I'm horrible with names, and I really want to say her name's Ellen, and I'm going to catch a lot of flack for forgetting her name. So this is a small cidery out of Vermont. They started with, if I remember correctly, they got really popular off their ice cider, which we have a little bit in that fridge there. But this one, what I found, she was recently on a podcast on Man, I'm just forgetting everything right now.
That's all right.
Good Beer Hunting. She was recently on that podcast, and I listened in. And one thing I wasn't aware of that I learned about her process is, so she does all these beautiful, 750s, really high end, like really beautiful ciders. And her issue was her distributors. I believe she distributes in many states. I don't know if it's all around the country, but she kept the distributors like, can you please give us something that we can sell, which is the 12-ounce can, and this is her answer to that. And one thing that I am super interested in, and I can't wait to find out more about it, is that she ferments on the pumice of the apples.
Define pumice.
Yeah.
I mean, it's basically
it's the grinding of the leftover parts of the
Yeah. After you press the apples, then out of the back end of the press comes pumice.
Yeah.
If you have a belt press, or
I always get it messed up with pumice.
Oh yeah,
which is what volcanic rock.
Yeah,
So
volcanic
rock, do I keep saying it wrong? But so that appley characteristic that's in this, a lot of it supposedly is coming from that process of fermenting on that. So actually, I'm using Mike right now as our guinea pig. So next time he's pressing, he's gonna steal some off the press and get some of the pumice and do well ferment.
Yeah, I need to talk to you about that because I have an idea how we might do something nice on that.
Yeah. I feel bad because the sheep won't get. We're not feeding the sheep.
Well, there'll be pumice afterwards, right?
Oh, hopefully.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
It'll just be alcoholic, and the sheep will be happy.
Yeah.
So we feed pumice to sheep in our operation. But I gave it to them as a side note the other day. I mean, having not pressed for the whole COVID era, we started pressing again the other day and not having obviously any apples because it wasn't the season. And man, those sheep about tore the freaking gate down. They remember the older ones.
Yeah, the older ones.
The lambs don't know anything about it. They're just wandering around. What the hell's going on here? Mom's gone. Yeah. But Mom is over there just snarfing this stuff up. Yeah. So it's kind of got not a real strong nose, but a little bit of nose to it, a little tannic note to it.
Nice, like for me, nice minerality, and then just that. It honestly, it's super appley. Like it
is quite appley, and not appley like apple juice where they put in fake apple flavor after taking all the apple flavor out.
Yeah.
But appley like a fermented apple should taste, right? It's something that takes a little tempering of expectations. A lot of people come into cider thinking it's going to taste like sweet cider, which is really, that's just apples ground up and pressed. It's going to just taste like apple, just like eating an apple. It does taste different, obviously. But this is nice kind of dryness, not a hint of sweetness, not too much. Yeah,
so it says no sugar added, but I think she stops her ferment short, so there's a little bit of sweetness.
Okay,
and that's for, as you were mentioning before, and this is me being a little bit of I guess cynical or whatever, but everybody says they want a dry cider, but in reality they want an off dry. They want a little bit of, and that's my personal experience.
I think you're dead on.
Yeah. And to really, and for me, like where I stand is make a good balanced drink. Like make something crushable, no matter if it's $100 or $10. That's why I was so impressed with the French ciders. I haven't had much experience with it, but the Chicago cider con I went to, forgot how many years, maybe 3 years ago. There, how they bring in the Are you and Sarah read that one?
Yeah.
The one with the pink.
Yeah.
That was my first time having French cider, and I was expecting this super dry because it's French, blah, blah, blah. And it was super sweet, super tannic, really well balanced. Like, okay, well, if the French are doing it this way, you know. So I think, and I'm fairly certain she stops her ferment short. I could be wrong.
But in any case, there's some residual sugar. It's got a really nice, I think you hit it on the head. It's balanced. It's it's not super sharp, not really tart, but it's not a syrupy sweet by any means. I mean, or a bland. You know, I think some of the modern ciders can get that way to where, you know, I mean, it's a fact. We don't have a lot of, in the commercial apple world, the trend, you know, when I was a kid, Michigan was the variety state. You might have had 30, 40 varieties. Any given orchard probably had 20 growing. And now, God, if you got 5, 6 varieties growing, you know, you're doing all right. Maybe 10, you know, but it's all driven by what drives the fresh industry. And so what drives the fresh industry, of course, isn't necessarily what we would like to purchase if we were going to make cider with it.
This may be getting a little off cider. Do you see that changing? So let me take a sidestep. One thing I realized in the beginning, because we started having apples showing up at the cidery, and Kyle has told me multiple times, like, hey, give it a shot. It's like, oh, it's super young. It's not ripe yet, but I taste it, and I'm like, oh, this just tastes like an apple I'd get at every single grocery store I've ever shopped at.
Yeah.
And it's dawning on me that I probably have never had a truly fresh, ripe apple, which makes me a little bit sad. What I've been doing for 34 years. But I think one movement we're trying to do here at Wilson's is get people back to the farm and make people realize that, hey, there should be a variety. There should be a variety of apples, like not just having 4 apples grown in an orchard or whatever. Do you see that ever changing? That's way too big of a question? But.
No, it's not a big question at all, I think. In fact, you know, we were talking earlier about the craft beer thing, right? I mean, if you'd have told me 20 years ago that it's not always going to just be Miller, Budweiser, and Michelob, you know, in our lives for choices for beer. And there's going to be this whole resurgence of local and regional breweries with a wide range of, I mean, almost a overabundance of varieties, you know, coffee, stouts, and triple hopped, and, you know, whatever. I would have laughed at you, you know. So I think it's up to consumers, because consumers at the end of the day tried these different beers and they said, we like this, to the point where they drove the sales completely towards craft beer. You know, I mean, all the growth in the last 10 years is pretty much in the beer industry has pretty much been craft beer, which is now leveling off. But nonetheless, it's taken, I don't know, I'm thinking 20, 25% of the market. So it's up to consumers. If they want to have apples that are picked immature by design, shipped across the country or sometimes around the world, and they're crunchy. You know, that's I've said before, crunchy is the new red, right? It used to be that you had to have an apple that was redder and redder and redder. Now it's all about focus groups say they want crunchy, so let's make them, let's break their damn teeth when they eat them, right? So if that's what people want, then that's what they're going to get. But if people say, no, I actually want some flavor in my fruit or in my cider, then that's what will happen. And you know, we're a little dimple in the apple industry, a little tiny, tiny dimple in the apple industry. But us and others are starting to say, hey, it's more important to look at not shelf life or not necessarily break your teeth crunchiness. Of course, we do grow a lot of crunchy apples, but there's some apples that are decidedly uncrunchy. Snow Sweet is one that properly ripened, it's unbelievable. I mean, you can taste mango or sometimes banana, or sometimes it's just like, I don't know what the hell that tastes like, but it's just freaking phenomenal, right? Properly ripened fruit has that. And I think it's the same thing as craft beer. It's like when people decide that that's what they really want, then they'll drive the industry towards that. And it hasn't happened yet, because I subscribe to all the Apple trade rags, and what's the emphasis right now is still on yield. You know, production, or drop your labor. You know, instead of saying meet consumer interest in flavor. Because if you read carefully, a lot of the stuff that comes out about focus groups and stuff, what consumers say they want is flavor in apples. Crunchiness, yes, but flavor also. Yeah. And that's just forgotten. So do we have to say we're never going to get there? No, I don't think so at all. I think it's up to consumers. So I mean, if people want to get apples that really taste like apples should, that are really, I mean, one way to express them is through fermentation maybe, but really, for me, an apple aficionado, you eat a Macintosh, let's say, fully ripened on a tree. I mean, you just can't imagine how apples can get a lot better than that, or especially a Jonathan. I like tart apples, so a Jonathan just perfectly ripened on a tree. My God, it's just like, that's what an apple should be. It's not break your teeth crunchy. It's just freaking, almost orgasmically good.
Yeah, that's what I try to do for drinks. Yeah, like we had some Nelson Pride. I think I'm saying that name right.
Williams Pride. Maybe.
Williams Pride.
Yep.
Generic white person name, Pride.
Yeah.
But that was a more interesting bite in terms of, I didn't know, because for me it was a little more like melony / tropical. There was those different fruit flavors going on. That was, I didn't know apples could do that. And here I've been making cider for however long. This is one of the part of, for me, my personal journey is just like, I can ferment. I trust that I can ferment the shit out of apple juice and make it taste damn good. But I don't know much about the varieties of apple or the science behind it. So that's the great thing about coming here.
And the thing that we need to learn as a company and together is, there are varieties that I think are just exceptional fresh apples. Mm-hmm. They're just, Snow Sweet is one example. Mm-hmm. Blondie is another. Crimson Crisp. There's apples that just, when you eat them, you say, my God, properly ripened, that's a freaking interesting, good apple. And because we're a U-pick orchard and, we have customers coming in and we do a lot of apple sampling, of course, COVID notwithstanding, we generally do. We get a lot of reactions and sort of, subjective feedback on these apples. And what we find is people that just say, God, I never knew an apple could taste like that. It really is something. But then you take that apple and turn it into a cider. It may not make a very interesting cider. Exactly, that's been kind of really a surprise to me. Williams Pride is an interesting one. And that was out of this disease resistance breeding program where they're trying to breed out susceptibility to apple scab, which is the worst disease in appledom. And I always thought, God, it's an interesting apple because the skin, whether it's actually physically thick, I've never put a micrometer on it or something, but it feels like a really thick skin. Mm-hmm. But underneath it is a really interesting flesh. So I thought, this is a perfect apple for making hard cider because we should get some sort of tannins or some kind of bitter notes out of that skin to blend with that really sweet flesh. And we did it a couple of years. We've never produced something that I think is up to the fruit itself. So we got to keep going on that. Yeah.
What's our crab apple situation here at Wilson's?
Pretty dire. Pretty dire. So
next topic. No,
I mean it's a sad but true truth. Crab apples, number one. The one we really like is Dolgo crab, just because it's been a great, and we used to have a little row here. I don't know, it was like 15 trees or something, semi-dwarfs, and we'd pick a fair few. I love to eat them. I like tart, and it's a pucker me up kind of apple, but it makes a really deliciously red. You tried some, right? I mean, the sweet cider from it is to kill for. I mean, it's just gorgeously good. But when we sacrificed 2 acres of land for strawberries, unfortunately, that was where the Dolgos went. And then we grafted over a bunch because we knew we liked them. And those particular trees, the rabbits ate. So, we believe we should exterminate all rabbits from the face of the earth. Yeah.
Make some good, get it up at Rapid Creek.
Yeah, there you go.
Rabbit leg.
Yeah.
Soup or whatever.
Yeah. So we've now resuscitated those initial rabbit-eaten plants and are planning to plant them out. But Dogo is one. We have another kind of quirky variety. We have some Wixom. We have some Geneva crab. We have one that's just I'll be interested in your use of. So we grow a variety called Crimson Gold, which is related to Crimson Crisp. It's out of this disease-resistant program about the same time, about third week September, about with Jonathan's. And they're good apple. It's not a great apple. It's a good apple. Crunchy, sweet. And so, but we had about a half a row that we could get trees of, and we planted them out in, I don't know, way back when, 2010 maybe. And they grew well. And then I said, well, we should really fill that row out. So I ordered enough to fill it out. And we got them, we planted them, and then of course you wait 3 years, and all of a sudden I think, Jesus Christ, that's a crab apple. That's not a real apple. Turns out there's a Crimson Gold crab apple, and that's what we got. And we made a cider with it the first year, and it is as clear as this water. I mean, it just fermented, and it turned just completely clear and had all the character of a kind of a slightly on the fruity, maybe a Sauvignon Blanc or something like that. It's just like a white wine. It's really a white wine type cider. So there's that one to mess with, and we do have a fair amount of them, half a row worth. But I'm super interested in getting back in the Dogo program because I miss them greatly.
Yeah, that was Nick didn't tell me what he was handing me the other day because we were getting ready for apples coming in, so we were reorging the cold rooms there. And I was like, just expecting, because we were filtering, so I thought this was the final blend of, I think we were doing Honeycrisp. So I'm expecting a, semi-sweet cider to enter my mouth. And it was a just straight up fermented Dogo. And I was like, whoa. And I was like, we were honestly, thinking of maybe blending it with our, that wild ferment, doing something with that wild ferment, bringing up the tartness a little bit, just playing with it. Just we have, because that was the first question to Kyle is, how much do we have of this? Like, when am I getting this next? And unfortunately, the rabbits are going to make that a little more difficult.
So rabbits.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Given that we have so little, and I think we only have 30 gallons sitting in the beverage barn. Really I want to do something fun with it, but I just don't want to just on a whim go, blend it with that will be good.
Well, we better do something or drink it, one or the other.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
When's the way sailing normally?
That'd be, January, February. Yeah. That'd be a fun thing to have for that.
So what is the process? I know we're getting away from alcohol with all my questions, but so we have a nursery here.
Yeah.
Correct. And that's where you're grafting, basically?
We do some, yep.
Okay.
I mean, and that's a new program for us. We've only done it about 3 years. Before that, we always bought all of our trees. But 3-4 years ago, we started doing some grafting in the winter, just because it's getting so hard. In appledom, you have a couple of options if you're a commercial grower. You can buy trees that are really nice from the West Coast, Willow Drive or Adams County Adams County in the east, Willows Drive in the west. Or there's so many other, Vanwell and stuff like that. These will be, like 5-6 foot tall. They'll have feathers, they'll have branches on them already. And you can buy them, and they're like $10, right? Mm-hmm. With patent and royalty rights and stuff all up. But that's going to give you Galas, Honeycrisp, Johnny Gold, maybe Snow Sweet if you're lucky. But if you want to move into, Golden Russet or even Gold Rush or whatever, you're really looking at small nurseries, and the trees are going to be, they're going to come to you, and they're generally like 2-3 foot tall. They look like the weak lamb that's going to die. They're just straggly 3/8 caliper. They're just, they're shit trees is what let's just call a spade a spade. And so, what are you going to do? And by and large, you either buy that scruffy, Roxbury russet from XYZ little nursery, or you graft them yourself. So we've just decided to start grafting some of that ourselves. And we have most of the signwood, because we have those trees growing. We just don't have enough of them.
Gotcha.
And so, yeah, that's the program. And then that lets us, the other problem is, of course, with an apple tree, you have a combination of a rootstock that determines the size and to a certain extent the disease resistance of the tree, and the scion, which is ultimately the determinant factor in what the apple produced is. And you go to XYZ little nursery, you're probably going to get one rootstock choice. Whereas if we graft them ourselves, we can match. Oh, we want, this is a vigorous growing variety, so we want to throttle it down with a really size controlling rootstock. Or this is a really wimpy grower like Gold Rush or Honeycrisp, and we want to really give it some push with a stronger rootstock. Okay. So we can make those choices.
And with the derecho coming through and doing that weird thing where every other tree, one was snapped at the union there. Are those roots there? Like, are they just done, or can we use that as a rootstock?
Yeah, they'll come up. We could graft onto them.
Okay,
yep.
Cool. Interesting.
Yep. They should come up. It really depends on, we're at the time of the year when the trees are all saying, let's get this fruiting shit out of the way and let's send resources back into the roots.
Okay.
So if they haven't had enough resources sent back into the roots for storage, then they're probably toast. But more than likely, they're going to come back with something in the spring, and we could graft onto that.
So it's just going to regrow naturally, and then when you see it's trying to grow, then you can put in. That's where you put the scion.
Yep.
in? Okay.
Exactly. Yep.
Interesting.
We'll pick it'll probably shoot up like 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 or a zillion shoots, and we'll pick one of them or 2 of them, graft onto them, and then let them grow up, and then pick one of them. Yeah.
Interesting. It's next level stuff, man.
Yeah.
I just had yeast.
Yeah, but we are kind of sucking wind in that, where we had just a lot of trees that snapped right at that graft unit, especially the Geneva rootstock. Geneva is a series out of, obviously, Cornell, Geneva, New York, and designed to be, or developed to be, disease resistant, especially to a fairly major bacterial disease called fire blight. And they just seem to have really weak graft unions. That's where we saw a lot of snapping.
Interesting. Even
Geneva 11, which is not supposedly, it's not notorious for that.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but yeah, if you got nothing better to do, you can see our video on that and check out all of our devastation, and then just grab you a damn cider and drink with us, because there's nothing to soothe the pain of a derecho better than a nice cider.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think that's about a wrap. What do you think?
Sounds good to me.
All right. Oh, yeah, I got a little cider.
Got a little left.
Now. All right. Well, in China, they have an expression which is, we won't do that. They say ganbei. Ganbei means bei is beza, which means like glass, and gan is dry. So that's instructions to just chug her down. But let's not do that with this one, because it's a nice cider. So cheers. Anyway. Yeah.
Cheers, Paul.
All right. Well, listen, everybody, thanks for tuning in, and come back see us again. We're going to get Greg on here often, for sure. We'll be talking about the successes many, failures few, of our unending quest to look at how to pull the best of our apples out into a hard cider, and support your local cideries. The beer guys get all the credit, but you really got to get out there and support some cideries. So do your best. Drink a cider. Enjoy life.